Hello, I'm Jack Pike, and welcome to the WIHS Journal program. My guest today is Leonardo Radomile, who is the founder of The Gathering, a faith-based community devoted to building meaningful lives. He is a graduate of the University of Chicago and then attended Harvard University, where he was a lecturer. Welcome, Leonardo. Delighted to speak with you today.
Thank you, Jack. I'm very happy to be with you.
So what led you to develop this community?
Well, what I found when I was teaching at Harvard, when I first went there, one of the things that really surprised me was how many of the students were unhappy. And the interesting thing about that is you're talking about some of the brightest kids in the country who have just guaranteed successful careers. I mean, Goldman Sachs just sucks up practically the whole class every year. And I couldn't understand why these kids were unhappy. So I started going very, very deeply into the research. Now, what's interesting about the research is when I really got into it and used it in my teaching, what we found was that Christians are happier, healthier, more successful, and live longer than their secular counterparts. I've been a believer for a long time, but that sure shocked the heck out of me.
I can imagine. Well, what did the research show on the mental health of Christians?
Well, what it showed, in the last 30 years, there's been an awful lot of research into what makes people thrive. You know, before that, psychology just dealt with curing mental illness, but they found when they cured mental illness, people still weren't happy and still weren't thriving. So they started looking at what makes people thrive. And it really comes down to four factors, all of which Christianity has. And I'm going to talk about this from a psychological point of view, not from a theological point of view. So
okay,
please keep that in mind. The four factors are faith, friendship, family, and meaningful work. Now, let's take a look at faith from a psychological, not from a theological point of view. Faith psychologically means having and believing in a story that tells you why you were born, what you should be doing with your life, and what happens after death. It makes life make sense, okay? And it helps them to meet challenges. With secular people, they don't have that because they don't have faith. And over 50% of them have anxiety or depression. The suicide statistics have gone through the roof. 60% of secular young people have reported at least one serious mental health issue, and 60% of young people have a negative outlook on life.
That's tragic.
They believe you can't get ahead, and nothing is really worth doing.
That's really tragic.
Faith is the perfect antidote to that, and the antidote to anxiety and depression. Now, another factor is friendship. Friendship is critical. And with Christians, you have community support. You have social connections. You have, when people of the same faith with the same assumptions get together and engage in activities, they build bonds. And that allows them to manage stress because it provides structures to cope with difficult experiences like death and divorce. Secular people usually don't have that. So, I mean, that's really important. And then you have meaningful work. And this one really shocked me because it tracks perfectly Romans 12:6-8. You know, we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. And that's what the psychology shows, is that when you find the gift that God gave you and build a career or a business around it, it gives you happiness and success, especially when you're using it in service to God and the community. And then the last factor is family. I mean, there's so many passages in the Bible emphasizing family, And the family is the foundation of society. It's the place where the closest lifelong relationships are built. It's the place where people are created and built. There's no more important structure. And, you compare this to the secular feminist movement, where you have women today finding themselves isolated and depressed in their 50s or older, unmarried, single, and alone. It's really amazing. The numbers are really amazing.
If you had to, I suppose if we're going to categorize or to sort these factors, it has to start with faith.
Absolutely. Nothing else makes sense without it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's no question that friendship and meaningful work and the family are all things that people who are not Christians definitely do get involved in and find meaning in. But it just feels like, if you start with a relationship with Christ, why that's going to be your foundation for this, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's really true. But getting back to secular people, you'd be surprised how many are not able to form meaningful relationships, meaningful work, and have problems in their family simply because they have such a negative outlook on life. Without the Bible, life doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Period. End of story.
Yes.
Okay. There's no secular counterpart that can do it.
So you formed a gathering, and looking on your website, you had some online communities, you have some in-person communities, it looks like, and you have a podcast. I wanted to just kind of talk about that for our listeners so that they can tap into that, through your website.
Oh, you bet. Well, what we did, we have podcasts on all different kinds of subjects, and again, we're a faith-based institution, so it comes from that point of view. And it really resonates with the science. There's nothing there that isn't totally scientifically backed up besides being faith content. We also have a free course which we encourage parents to take, and we encourage their kids to take separately, and then use that as discussion points over the dinner table. And it deals really deeply with faith, family, friendship, and meaningful work.
That's really great.
It really makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also lecture to parent groups throughout Florida.
I would like you to, before we end, give a little bit of information on your contact information again.
Sure. Contact information, my business email is ltradamile, RADOMILE, @gmail.com. And I'm happy to chat with or, correspond with your listeners that are interested in this work, because it's, we're on the brink of losing a young generation, and we really have to work on this, and this is really what I'm devoting my career to now.
That's great. Mr. Radamile, thank you so much for taking your time to talk with us today, and you have a great day.
Thanks, Jack. It was a pleasure.
This concludes my discussion with Leonardo Radamile from The Gathering. Interested listeners can email him at ltradomile@gmail.com or through their website, thegatheringhome.org. That's thegatheringhome.org. Or you can call WIHS at 860-346-1049. The content discussed does not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of WIHS. Thank you again for listening. I'm Jack Pike for WIHS.